Sarah Kennedy, it's such a pleasure to have you on today. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Mariza. It's great to be on.
I think we're going to be talking about probably one of the most kind of sought after conversations around women's health, which is weight resistance, particularly in midlife. So many of my patients over the last 17 years in clinical practice have told me, I don't understand what's going on. I am eating the same way. I am exercising. If anything, I am overdoing. I'm more calorie restricting. I'm working out harder, and yet the scale continues to climb. And this was my experience as well. And that's not the only thing that's happening. I find that in midlife, also, we're not sleeping as well. We've got our bandwidth is just not the way that it used to. We're struggling with chronic stress. It's just a lot of things that can really drive a lot of food noise and drive cravings and, all these things. And curious, this is the conversation I want to have. Kind of what has been your foray into helping women really support them in this journey?
Oh, look, I love what you're saying because all of these, and having been through it myself, I'm going to start with the disappointing facts first. All right?
Yes.
It's terribly unfair. Women in peri and postmenopause have to eat 200 calories less a day just to stay the same size. It's just not fair, isn't it? You've gone through years of a menstrual cycle, now it finishes, and you've got to eat less calories. And that's because your estrogen has decreased and your metabolism has decreased, and a whole lot of other things are going on. So just to stay, that's a very average, but just to stay the same size. So and in fact, hunger increases, and a lot of this noise also increases. Of course, the other thing is it accumulates a lot of the fat, and that accumulates around your waist and middle. So suddenly from having a waist, you're suddenly without a waist. And it's just like, I don't want this. So, what do we recommend? So Calocurb, which I'm going to talk to you today about, was developed by the New Zealand government over 15 years and 30 million in research. Now, you'd say, why by the New Zealand government? Well, all primary research in New Zealand is actually funded by the government because we don't have large pharmaceutical. So the government actually has government-owned research agencies that do this, what we would call very blue sky or primary research. So back in 2010, a group of very talented scientists with an organization called Plant and Food Research, which is the one of them that's owned by the government, had a hypothesis that they would find a natural plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. Now, you'd say, well, why did they have that hypothesis? Partially, it came from historical reasons. So in times of famine in the Scottish Highlands, they chewed very, very bitter berry called heathberry to suppress appetite. In the Kalahari Desert, tribesmen chew very, very bitter cactus before they go out hunting. And this was actually an origin of hoodia, which was an ingredient used for a number of years. So they had this, and then there'd been some recent work on bitter substances and mice. They put in for a grant from the government. The grant was called Foods for Appetite Control, and they received a $20 million fund back to start working on this. Fast forward, they did some incredible first-in-the-world things, and they discovered that we actually had bitter taste receptors right down through our gastrointestinal tract. So you might say, well, why is that important? It doesn't actually seem that important, but it's a secondary mechanism that we developed in evolution to prevent us from potentially toxic food. So they tested thousands of products. They found the one that did activate these bitter taste receptors to release appetite-suppressing hormones, and that's what they named amarisate, which is the active ingredient in Calocurb. So I'm trying to fast forward, this is 15 years of research, but when taken, we have clinically, in 3 human clinical studies, we're just about to finish our 4th, showing that we reduce hunger by 30%, We reduce craving, which is really important for women, by 40%, and reduce calorie intake by an average of 18%. Now, everyone always goes, well, what's the difference between the injectables, say a semaglutide? On average, on an injectable, you reduce your calories on average by around 24%. So we're 18, slightly left, but 24.
Wow. Okay.
Help people, to help women, and obviously men, it's non-denominational here, but to help women, this really can help with those cravings and hunger, just so you can eat that 200 calories less. I also want to emphasize here for women, our third human clinical trial was in women. And now I was a bit grumpy about this at the time because we'd done it in men. And you would know that doing a clinical trial in women is actually particularly difficult because we have hormones, we have a menstrual cycle. So while the men's trial probably took about 4 to 5 weeks, the women's trial took 18 months because we had to get 30 women, put them through 3 treatments. This is all double-blinded and independently done. 3 treatments on the exact same day of their menstrual cycle, on the exact same day of the week during COVID. So, and
Yes, definitely complicated.
$250,000 later. However, there is an upside to this. Women are more receptive to GLP-1. So whilst we'd done this clinical in males, so we give Calocurb in a 24-hour water-only fast, we give Calocurb at 16 hours and 20 hours. So the last 8 hours of a water-only fast where you will be the hungriest. In men, we showed that we had an 80% decrease in increased hunger. In women, we showed 100% decrease in increased hunger and 120% in craving, and an average of a 14.5% reduction in rebound eating. So this showed us that women were more sensitive to GLP-1. We're not quite sure why. We think maybe an evolutionary for the protection of the fetus or, a new or unborn baby. Yeah, so I've given you a whole lot of bad news about aging and all the rest, but I'm just giving you some good news here that women are more receptive to GLP-1.
Yeah. Well, I love the history of kind of how you guys came about to, discovering the compounds and, building something around that would support the reduction of appetite and cravings. We hear a lot today about food noise, that even when we're not hungry, I call it like an unmet need. There's something in the body's needing something. And often the quick thing to reach for is going to be the pantry or the fridge. I know for years I felt like at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, like clockwork, I had this unmet need. I would just have these crazy cravings. And even to this day, I mean, obviously I'm using Calocurb and I love it. But even to this day, knowing what I know and understanding the physiology, occasionally I just hit a wall at 3 and my body's like, let's do something about this. And now today I take some sneakers and I walk outside, usually within about 90 seconds, or I usually take a 5 to 10 minute walk, but 90 seconds, that craving is gone. But it can be so hard. It's so noisy sometimes. Even last night as a busy mom, I have a 4-year-old and it was a weekend. Like, it was a lot. We did a lot. And by the end of the night, I think I was just, I felt myself leaning towards more emotional eating. Like I cut off eating at 7 o'clock at night every night, and it was 8. And not to say that there isn't wiggle room for special things, and things like that. But like my body's pretty programmed. I'm pretty good. And I just think I just had hit a wall again. By the end of the night, I was so happy to be done. My son was in bed. I was so ready. I was just like, Mama needs a snack, and I didn't. I ended up having a tea instead. But talk to me a little bit about, because I think that's the struggle for so many women, the cravings, but the food noise that feels so unavoidable, particularly in midlife.
It's interesting you talk about that, and I'm going to give you the physiology of it.
Yeah,
and
that'd be great.
Anecdotally, our feedback is just huge. You take the noise out. But what I try to explain to people is our hunger, our appetite center is in our hindbrain. Our hindbrain is very primitive. That's what we developed first in evolution. And it's fascinating. It actually sits right next to our addictive center in our hindbrain. And when you reduce your calories by 25%, your hunger actually doubles over 4 months. So the ghrelin, because it's telling you to go out and look for food, your body thinks you're going into a famine. So it's upping and upping and upping that. So this is why the reason why 99% of diets fail. To your point, though, it's really interesting. So there's the hindbrain sitting there, that little primitive. And then we have the forebrain over it like this. And the forebrain is what says to, no, you don't need to eat this, just because you feel like, you want a bit of time out, you're tired or something like that, you don't need to do this. But as I say, you put on stress, hormones, alcohol, lack of sleep, anything like that, and the little forebrain goes, woof, and off it comes.
Just comes right off.
And then
no frontal lobe, no control center. It's just all limbic survival brain.
that is that forebrain, and that is a lot of that noise because you're talking to yourself the whole time going,
oh yeah, there's a lot of negotiating going on.
And then finally you go, oh, I'm over this, I'm tired, I'm stressed, poof. And then your little hindbrain goes, woohoo, we're out. I always say to people, how many times have you eaten, well, it's a New Zealand thing, but hot chips late at night after a few glasses of alcohol? That whole thing have gone off like that. So your whole forebrain. So to women, I say to everyone, don't blame yourself. It is actually a physiological, it's a hormonal loop in us that was so important in evolution because, if you didn't have it, you'd lie in your caves going, you know what? I'm not going out, it's raining. So it had to drive us out to hunt. Of course, nowadays, we're surrounded in modern...
Yeah, we're not... Yeah, I was going to say, it's so crazy how our evolution has absolutely not caught up, or like our genetics, with this modern day world where, the pantry is stocked, the fridge and the freezer is stocked. We can go out, especially in the U.S. Oh my gosh. There's no... Yeah, anytime. Yeah.
And so, in a very basic form, it was so important. We've actually got our brain didn't evolve at the same as in the environment we live in. So, you would know that the WHO, so the World Health Association, actually said obesity, we have more as people overweight is more a problem than starvation now, which is...
Absolutely.
Is a symptom of our environment. So as I say to people, if you can do something to help that food noise and that negotiation, look, do it. Give your poor little primitive brain a bit of a break and help it out. So, as I said, this is in fact what, of course, the injectables do. They use synthetic GLP-1, which is your appetite suppressing hormone. They use that, they inject it, and it tells your receptors in your brain and your stomach and all the rest, you're full. You don't need to eat, which is great. But it's a synthetic hormone, which is nothing wrong with a synthetic hormone, but you inject it, I'm going to say it's about, I don't know the actual level, but let's say it's 30,000 times above your normal GLP-1 in your body. You're going to have high GLP-1, which tapers off during the week. You're going to have high GLP-1 when you're asleep. You're going to have high GLP-1 all the time.
Yeah.
So what we do is...
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Yeah, because I feel what I loved about Calocurb out the gate, the thing about injectables, there's no finessing. I mean, you can finesse a little bit. Obviously, I have friends who are amazing practitioners who are helping with a more lowered dosage. But even still, there's not a lot of wiggle room for finesse. And getting the right tailored dosage for yourself, it can be really challenging. And this is what I loved about Calocurb, is that you really can play with it to figure out what works best for you without this high dosage in the beginning, kind of waiting for it to taper off throughout the week.
And you are saturating your receptors, which is why you have to keep upping your dosage to a very... I kind of liken it, and I do this very carefully because I don't know this, but I kind of liken it a bit to the first birth control pills, which are at such high levels, and I feel this is a bit like it. So if you can, in fact, it's interesting what you're saying, because a lot of practitioners are using a lower dose now and using Calocurb at the same time, because Calocurb stimulates your natural release of GLP-1 versus the injectable. So if you've got both an exogenous and an endogenous source, you can use a lower dosage. And what they're finding with the lower dosage is that by day 5, when you'll get a breakthrough hunger, if you're taking Calocurb at the same time, you don't. So just backing up a bit, and I probably didn't explain what Calocurb does very well. It goes down, it dissolves in the upper gut or in the upper duodenum, and it stimulates these TAS2R, or these bitter taste receptors, which are in the enteroendothelial or L cells. These, when stimulated, and remember this is below the stomach, release, first of all, CCK, which is an very potent appetite suppressing hormone, GLP-1, which we're all familiar with, and then PYY, which is lower down. So it's in fact stimulating these 3 appetite suppressing hormones. Now, with CCK and GLP-1, it stimulates it to 600% above base level, which is twice the postprandial, or twice the amount that you would normally produce when you eat. So we are super stimulating them to release. Now, why is that important? And this is what I say all the time, and this is clinically, this is published in other papers. You have to be above 400% to make any behavioral change whatsoever. So all of these ones that go, we stimulate GLP-1, yes, they do. Look, eating a banana will, eating an apple will, because that's your normal body feedback loop. It will stimulate it, but it won't stimulate it at a level to get a behavioral change, which is why at 600%, we get that average of 18% reduction in calorie. So we are super stimulating your endogenous release, or your natural release. So we say to people, well, practitioners are using it one of 3 ways. They're using it as an alternative if people can't take the side effects. The side effects are pretty tough. They can't afford it, or they don't want to inject themselves. The second one we talked about before, in combination, because you can lower the dosage right down, reduce the side effects, reduce the cost, and you've got this endogenous going. The third one, though, I find the most interesting, and I always say it's not an if, it's a must. When people are titrating off the injectables, most people don't realize that they have depressed their natural GLP-1 down to 0. Now, this is quite natural, because whenever you use a synthetic hormone, think of testosterone, think of anything like that, you suppress your own release, because your hormones go, hey, I don't need to do anything. I'm on holiday, so I'm not going to do anything. So when you come off the injectables, this is why people get this rebound hunger. You talk to them and I say, I've never had hunger like it. And often the weight rebound. So that time, absolutely, as they're titrating off, absolutely I would use Calocurb to act as that natural sort of, that natural
buffer. Yeah, I would call it like a buffer. Yeah. And I hear that all the time with my patients, hence why I'm always recommending it, because, women will be on, and, I think there's a hope that you can come off and still maintain results. And for a lot of women, it's very challenging.
And it's not, once again, it's not about willpower, and it's not their fault.
It's physiology. Yeah.
Appetite suppressing hormones right down to 0, and you're going to, it's going to come back in absolutely fierceness at you. So, yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, tailoring it as well, you can come in and out of Calocurb. Like, I take it once a day because I intermittent fast, so I don't eat before 12-ish. So I might take mine, at 9 in the morning, and that'll see me right through, so I wouldn't have eaten, would have finished eating like you at about 7 the night before, and it'll see me through to 12-ish, 1 o'clock. But other people take it like coming into the holiday season. Think,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
you want to eat. You just don't want to eat as much.
Yeah.
So it's not going to stop you eating. You're just not going to be able to eat as much. You are going to feel full faster. So I always equate it to people, like when you have a really big meal and about 45 minutes later you go, ooh, I wish I hadn't eaten that. That is your feedback loop. Your food has disintegrated, partially gone into your upper gut, which has released these GLP-1 hormones, which go to your brain and go, hey, you should probably stop eating now. And that's why you feel full. Remember your mother used to say, chew 10 times before you swallow. But of course, modern day, we're all like in a hurry.
Rushing. Yeah. The days of mindful eating. Yes.
Is absolutely right. So we are just telling you full before you're full. So people come in and out of it, take it before the holidays. We get a lot of people that take it like, if they're going on a cruise or something like that.
Yeah.
Or food, but won't eat as much. But then when you don't want it, I went to an amazing, amazing degustation dinner the other night. I'm not going to take my Calocurb. I want to try each one of those extraordinary meals. So that's, I think, the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's the finesse I was talking about, Sarah. Actually, Sarah, I want to take a moment because we talked about 3 different scenarios. You talked about one, using it on its own because you don't want to inject, or the side effects were too crazy, or it was just too expensive, or any of those options, right? Any of those reasons why you didn't get on a synthetic hormone GLP-1, right? And so I want to go through how we can use it in replacement. And then, so let's walk through that because I want to get really practical. And then I want to walk through, okay, let's say someone is on a GLP-1 right now. They're on semaglutide or they're on whatever they're on, Mounjaro, they're on tirzepatide, and they would love the idea of lessening their dose, right? I think that's every conversation I have with any patient or even colleague or friend who's on it doesn't want to keep upping their dosage. That's the through line of the conversation of what can I do to not keep on increasing this dose? So how could we supplement in Calocurb to do that? And then I would also love to talk about if someone's on a GLP-1 and they really would love to get off of it for a number of reasons, how they can do that a little bit more seamlessly without the rebound effect of just getting all that weight back. And basically, how discouraging to be on a medication that's got side effects to some degree. You kind of go through the process of doing that, and then you get off of it, and within 3 months, you've put on your weight.
Yeah. So as an alternative, if you're wanting to control your portions and you're doing weight management, we always say take it an hour and a half before lunch and before dinner, and take it on a relatively empty stomach. The reason being it's a delayed release capsule. You want it to go through your stomach and disintegrate in the upper duodenum.
Yeah, you want it to go and do its job.
Where it's going to do it, all right?
Yeah.
Do it there as it goes down, just a little part of that. So on an empty stomach or relatively empty. And, and I usually take a glass of water with mine because I don't really like taking capsules, but they are very, very small capsules.
They're very small. They're very doable.
The other thing is that we have human bioavailability trials. The other thing is it is 99% of it is kept in the intestinal tract. So it is only focused on the intestinal tract. Why is that important? 1% is absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, why is that important? Because it's doing its job in the intestinal tract. And then that's important because many people say, can I take it with medication? Of that 1%, less than 5% of that 1%, I haven't done the calculations, but it's pretty small, is metabolized in the liver. So absolutely safe to take with that. You're not going to change anything in the metabolism through the liver, which is really important.
Yeah, just
on the intestinal tract. And I try to equate it to like a ping pong ball going down, and it's hitting these bitter taste receptors as it goes down and firing off these appetite suppressing hormones. It does last for 4 to 6 hours. And we know that because both clinically, we've measured it in the bloods for 4 to 6 hours, and it does stay elevated, your appetite suppressing hormones. And remember when I talked to you about the female trial, 4 hours after the last capsule, they had an eat to your full meal and they ate 14.5% less calories. So 4 hours afterwards. So an hour to an hour and a half, I never get that specific, before a main meal.
I'm sure no one is. I mean, some people maybe, but I would say most people are kind of like, it's when they remember, ideally an hour before.
And on an empty stomach.
And let's be honest, busy moms, like the women who I get to take care of, like it's all a crapshoot. Like, you're kind of like, you have a sense of when you want dinner to happen and hopefully it all goes as planned, so.
But because it lasts for 4 to 6 hours, you do have a variation.
You have a big window. So maybe aim for let's say on your way home from work would be a good time or something like that. Or when you walk in the door so that you know that you're within that window by the time you have dinner.
You're usually going to have, maybe a drink when you get home or something like that, drink of water or some tea or something like that. Just have it. I always try and think I have a cup of coffee at 10:30 in the morning. So that's when I'm sort of...
Oh, that's when you're thinking about it for lunch. Yeah. Yeah.
In my bag. But what I love about it, you will eat a smaller meal because you will feel full faster. But that fullness will keep you going for a long time.
Yeah. So for late night cravings, I think that's the thing. If there's anyone who's like, okay, when do I, to kind of try it out, to start it, I think dinner would be such a great time. And like having it that hour before, let's say you eat it, average 6 to 7, take it at 5. And then, but it's going to last until about 10 o'clock at night. You're kind of probably going to be through your danger zone.
We get so much feedback about that. Mm-hmm. We really do. You've stopped me both sweet snacking and salty snacking, which is interesting for us. So you're just feeling full. You've got no need. I mean, you might have been full after your dinner, but you just feel like that's something a bit more. You're not going to feel like that. So certainly, the other thing, as I said, you can come in and out of it. I often say for PMS or...
Oh, yeah. Ooh, late luteal. Yeah. And that's where I was last night. I was like, it was all hitting. Late luteal, mama stress. I had kids over. Yeah, it was a lot. And I was at the end of the night, I was like, I need something. I could feel that. And I didn't take it last night because overall, it's so funny. Like I felt good earlier in the evening. And I think all the stress just added up. Mind you, I disciplined myself out of that decision, but it would have been a lot easier with the Calocurb in my system.
But most people don't realize in that late luteal phase, or what's typically called PMS, God, I keep saying these little stats, don't I? But women on average will eat 200 calories more a day, some up to 600 calories. Now, the reason for that, of course, is your body is preparing itself in case you implant that egg.
Exactly. No, that is the purpose of the luteal phase, is whether you like it or not, your body primes up for a potential pregnancy every single month, especially, in those, 30 plus years that we're in our reproductive age. Yeah. Yeah.
So, that can help. So the thing is, you're like, oh my God, I know this week's coming up. This 7 days is coming up. I'm going to use my Calocurb because I don't want to undo the rest of the month. So all of these but it's quite funny. I'm like the cobbler's children who never have shoes. I had my bottle of Calocurb at work and I gave it to a friend. And then I was home over the weekend and I'm like, I've got no Calocurb. I've got no Calocurb. And I'm like, oh, man, so it was a really interesting. I was fine, but, it's just sort of like, they used to say gin was mummy's little helper. I say Calocurb's mummy.
I think I love it. Definitely a lot healthier helper than gin.
The other thing is people will say, well, you say that a synthetic GLP-1 will depress your own natural GLP. What happens when you come off Calocurb? So
especially after a holiday or a vacation or that luteal phase. And this is what I love about it is you're giving us examples as we're stepping into the holiday season. We know, it is an average of 5 to 10 pounds gained during the holiday season. And as we get older, it becomes almost impossible to lose it. We spend the first half of the year just trying to lose the weight that we gained during the holidays. And so I love that we're having this conversation now. Literally, this is coming out this interview, this conversation is coming out right before the holidays. I want everyone to be like, okay, I feel like I'm more prepared and I've got a buffer. I've got a plan, because I think that's what's so important. So let's say the holidays are over. You're back to your normal routine. You're not having all the holiday parties or the cookie, whatever you're doing, the cookie parties. And now you're on the other side and you're knowing you don't necessarily need it. Let's get in. Yeah, we're talking about that.
Like I said, a synthetic depresses your natural. So our scientists, well, when I say ours, the government scientists believe we upregulate. So we are exercising that little bit of taste receptors all the time. So we actually upregulate their activity. So we're improving your gut-brain axis. So,
Right.
This is improving.
So it's improving the communication. So there's more sensitivity to this communication versus let's say before Calocurb, based on, we talked about a lot of the different reasons why we could be messing with that communication. Even what we're eating could be messing with that communication as well. Now we're kind of heightening that communication. So kind of on the opposite side of what would happen with the GLP-1 injection, we're really seeing an upregulation of this communication.
Yes, and I think I said to you earlier, our 4th human clinical gets unblinded at the end of this month. Now, why I'm saying this has taken over 2 years and $2 million. It's the largest human clinical in a supplement that's been done in New Zealand. So we've got 150 people, men and women, BMI between 25 and 35, on Calocurb and not on Calocurb for 6 months with a 3 months follow-up. And so we're measuring weight, body conformation, bloods, and numerous other biomarkers. So I'll really be able to categorically tell you then that we upregulate, because that's one of the measurements. But I can't believe I'm saying it. For like 2.5 years, I've been going,
You've just been under, you can't say anything.
no, but we're doing this great clinical.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, and over the course of 6 months, I mean, we're talking about, a half a year where you were looking at a lot of factors, people living a life, doing their thing. This is going to be I'm really excited to hear the results when you're able to share. When will you be able to share?
Hopefully, we'll be able to share top line, but we won't be able to share a lot because we've got to publish first.
Yeah.
So it'll be by the end of this month. And of course, I don't know. It's all done independently from us. And
yeah, so it's government, like you said.
Yeah. And so I say to the chief scientist, well, tell me. And he goes, well, I don't know, Sarah. It's not unblinded yet. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, really? So anyway, we know anecdotally we get so much feedback from, people losing weight. I do want to say, though, what makes me frustrated, everyone takes something and they expect to lose 10 pounds in a week. It is never going to happen. Even on an injectable, as they increase the dosage, it will take 3 months to start seeing something. Calocurb doesn't take that long, but nothing is going to make you lose 10 pounds in a week.
And I'll really be honest with you, it's so dangerous to be losing that amount of weight that quickly. And that should not even be the expectation in terms of, I know we've glamorized the GLP-1s in such a way that it's the miracle drugs that just, you're just dropping so much weight. And I think that hasn't really been the lived experience for so many people that are on it. A lot of my patients, maybe I've seen a drop of three pounds in a week is really what I'll see from my patients. And I think when we're talking about a supplement, I don't think we should have that expectation. So I do appreciate you mentioning that. I think what a lot of my patients are looking for is they're frustrated with the food noise. They're frustrated with the cravings that they're rationally, logically, they know that they shouldn't even have. They feel like they have no control over it. And it's that lack of control that it's not just frustrating, but disheartening. And we find ourselves, I feel like when we don't have control over our cravings, it can feel like a shame spiral and it becomes something even deeper. Yeah.
Well, as I said to you, just think about that little hindbrain. It's waiting to come out.
I believe you.
I think, and I've said it before, every founder has a personal story, because if you didn't, you wouldn't do anything as crazy as start your own company. You really wouldn't. And, I've always said why. I mean, I was presented the idea by the government and, just had never, ever seen that amount of science in this category before. However, it really responded to me personally because I'd had a love-hate relationship with food my whole life. Literally, I was on my first diet when I was 10 years old. And so this love food, love food, eating, binging, not eating. Every time you eat, you hate yourself for eating. And this constant cycle. And I've been on it 6, 7 years now. I don't take it twice a day, I only take it once. But I can honestly say to you, I'm at peace with food. I don't have that. I've got to eat. I'm not going to eat. I've got to eat. And that it is so liberating. Yeah. And I think many, many people will find it like that, just taking that constant negotiation out of your head. When am I going to eat? What am I going to eat?
I love this. This is powerful. And changes everything. Like you really summed it up in the most perfect way, which is you have your relationship with food, you have peace with it. It's not a constant, you're not fighting yourself against it or, feeling guilty because you do something. You're like, I have found this beautiful homeostasis and equilibrium because I am supporting my physiology.
That's 100% right. So I always say it because I loved your statement about getting into the shame or guilt cycle. It's so many, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do that? All of this thing. And it is this guilt part. We don't often talk about it. So I love this. More people are talking about food noise and so on like that because it was something shameful. And what it actually said was, I have no willpower, which is what we know now. It's actually a physiological adaptation from evolution. And in fact, the ones with food noise and that, just take heart because you were the ones that probably survived because you were the ones that got out of the cave. So you're actually highly evolved.
I was going to say, even myself, I don't know if I was on my first diet at 10, but it was pretty early. I remember there was a time where I thought if I just eat oranges and crackers, I have no idea. I think I may have been 13 years old. I was so thin. And I literally ate oranges and crackers, and that was my diet. I don't even know how this was allowed. They just must not have been paying attention to me. But I just remember, so much of my life, I thought for a long time, I think a lot of us still feel, or at least our teens or 20s, that it was all about willpower, that I could willpower my way, that as long as I had enough discipline, and it was this constant, tug and pull of how much willpower can you have? And there's parts of me that still find myself gravitating in that direction of I talk about being one thought away, one thought away from going to the pantry or going outside to take a walk. And I've programmed myself to do the walk because I often know that it's not a real craving. I always ask, are you willing to eat an apple? A whole apple right now? Is that where you're at? Or are you just trying to go for the chips or whatever it may be? But like you described, it's not about that. It's so much bigger. It's really about that limbic system, that hindbrain that you're talking about, that often really hijacks us, especially in times of stress. And so for all the women listening to this, this is the conversation I have with my patients all the time, is that they just feel so ashamed and in this spiral of shame because they feel like they don't have enough willpower. I can't tell you, Sarah, how many times I've had a patient tell me, or the first, on the intake form or in our first conversation, I just need you to know that I am not lazy. I need you to know that I am trying so hard. And it just breaks my heart that there's so much blame, that we put on women, particularly about weight gain in midlife or weight gain or overeat, all those things. And this is why I was so excited to have this conversation with you, because if we could at least damper that noise and we could have peace with food and have a healthy relationship with what we consume, that is so much of the winning the game. And weight loss, yes, it's a side benefit, but I feel like having a beautiful, healthy relationship with food is really the start of it.
So, interesting, a lot of people will say, well, why didn't we know this before? Why didn't we know this? And the interesting thing is that when Wegovy launched in 2021, it was approved by the FDA, Novo Nordisk spent $1 billion on advertising or on marketing. They took out to dinner 239,000 doctors, because up until that point, only around about 3% of practitioners understood the true etiology of weight management. Now, that's why we all thought like that. So this has been, I think, revolutionary in the fact that we now understand what is happening in our body and what is driving this hunger and craving and so on like that. So I often get down on my knees and I pray to Novo Nordisk and I say thank you every day for putting this extraordinary messaging out about weight management and really taking away some of this guilt and shame. Up until that time, you went to a practitioner or anyone and they'd say, it's willpower and exercise. It's calories in and calories out. It is so not. That is such a simplistic answer that I get very cross about it. And
I do too.
there is still a lot of people who say that. And I can't.
Oh, yeah. Especially to women in midlife in particular, like you're just lazy. You're eating more calories than you actually think. You're not actually exercising enough. Like there's just blame. And I'm like, this is a lived experience of millions of women collectively who are putting on weight without permission. You're telling me that it's laziness? It's a lack of willpower? I was like, no, we are all having this experience. Like it doesn't.
Well, I often think, and it's not always, and that's a bit of a generalization, it's young people in their early 20s or mid-20s with a high metabolism, usually males, and I often look at them and think, yeah, I want to see you in 20 or 30 years' time, when your metabolism slowed and all of these things are happening and you're going to be struggling and you're going to be rethinking that calories in and calories out, that whole there. So
I love that. It's so true. And you know what I did find fascinating that your research really showed that women were more receptive to this. I shared this with a friend and a couple people a few weeks ago. I was visiting friends and I happened to overhear a conversation with the husband. And he was telling a massage therapist, I think that they're really close, that he had lost 12 pounds in a couple of months because he had cut out late night eating. And yes, there's something to be said about that. But like the fact that 12 pounds in like 2 months or a month and a half, I was like, every woman would love that. It just doesn't happen for us. It just, our hormones are different. Sarah, I completely agree with you that there are a lot of people in their 20s and even in their 30s who just don't understand that hormones are playing a big role here, particularly for women in midlife and even men. As we get older, we do see the changes in our metabolic health. And we know that women are more vulnerable, particularly in their 40s and their 50s. And so the question I have for you, the big question, and I know we've touched upon this a little bit, but let's say someone gets their Calocurb, it's at the house, they're opening their supplements and they want to know exactly how to get started. What would you recommend kind of starting into this journey?
Well, first thing is read the instructions. We do have
always a good idea.
We do have, you'll be surprised how many, mainly men. When you start, take 1 a day for 2 days, 2 a day for 2 days, and then it's 2 small capsules, that hour before lunch and an hour before dinner, or as we talked about, that flexibility. Now, the reason for that is you are super stimulating these appetite suppressing hormones. Now, in a very small, about 5% of people, they may get a laxative effect. So a loosening of the stool.
Great for chronic constipation.
Oh, unbelievable. And about 5% of people. And then you may be one of the lucky ones that only need one. You're what we call a super taster. So you have between 1 and 25 bitter taste receptors down your gastrointestinal tract, where most of us have between 1 and 18. So you may be the super taster. So that's really what that onboarding is for. Always remember, take it on a relatively empty stomach if you can, and a large glass of water. Really, that is it. And once you establish your dose, you can come in and out of it.
I love that. Okay, that is doable. You're absolutely right. I love read the instructions, but I wanted to just walk it through I get how life can be busy. And sometimes when we're listening to a conversation like this, it's like, okay, I can take to the bank. I get that. Okay. And Sarah, honey, I'm super excited. We'll have the website and I have a discount code for 10% off using Dr. Mariza, and I'll have everything in the show notes, but go to the website. Sarah, anywhere that you would love us to go to learn more about Calocurb, to learn more about you.
Oh, look, if you go to calocurb.com or www.calocurb, that's CALOCURB.com. It has everything in it. And there is a page where you will get someone coming back to you within 2 to 3 hours, unless it's evening time in New Zealand, unless it's during the middle of the night. Someone will come back for any of your questions. So please feel free to reach out to us, and certainly, your practitioner. But these are
Absolutely
backed by human clinical 15 years, and depending if you trust your government, it's the New Zealand government.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that. And I love that you have more and more research coming out. I'm excited to run into you guys, spend time with you at A4M. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that we have such a powerful and effective tool that is research backed, that can help, it can address all the things we talked about today. So thanks for educating us today, Sarah. And it was such a pleasure.
No, it was lovely. And I look forward to meeting you there. And yeah, thank you. And look, please reach out to us at any stage. I can only talk from I can talk from thousands and thousands of feedback, but I can talk to my own personal experience. And yeah, it's a game changer.
I agree. And speaking from my own personal experience as well, it has been a game changer, particularly for dinner. Again, I'm not a big late night snack person, but dinner's often my biggest meal. And I'm not a mindful eater. I'm just not. And so I can eat pretty darn fast. I'm not going to lie. And it's something I want to address, but I seem as a mom, especially in this season of life, it just doesn't seem to be happening for me. And so Calocurb has been amazing for dinner time. So I'm really grateful. And my husband too, in particular, who's more of a late night. I'm definitely not a late night snacker. He is. And it has been a game changer for him.
Oh, look, I'm so pleased, Mariza. And it's lovely to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you as well, hun. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.